Moving on to the shooting guards. The shooting guards, I think, are also another one of those categories that's not super interesting. I think we both knew who our ones and twos were going to be, pretty definite. But I think that's when the interesting conversation comes into play at 3, 4, 5, and the honorable mentions. So starting off with the honorable mentions or guys you wish you could put in the top 5, but you can never justify it. Who do you have in there as your honorable mentions, if you have anybody?
No, I do have one.
Okay.
Klay Thompson.
Okay. He's a guy that
Um,
you wish you could put in, or you guy.
no, he's just an honorable mention. I couldn't
Okay.
justify him putting at five
Mm.
with some of these other players that I have on here. But to be honest, they don't win four without him. I
Yeah.
mean, they put that team together so well and constructed it to where it wasn't just Steph. You know, you had to watch out for Clay as well.
Hmm.
Obviously, 60 in a game, 35 in a quarter without
Yep.
missing a shot is an incredible feat. Um, it's just hard um, from the other shooting guards that have played. But yeah, no, I couldn't justify putting him at five.
Yep. No, I get it. Um, I have two honorable mentions. I have George Gervin and Clyde Drexler. I couldn't justify putting those guys on. Um, Gervin and Clyde ranked out decently on my list, but I just personally couldn't put them above some of the guys. Shooting guard position is a really talented position in the NBA, and we're talking about from the beginning of the NBA to where we are today. The shooting guard position is still the premier scoring, premier option position.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you have a lot of other guys who are going to be premier options at small forward, power forward, center, point guard, wherever. But shooting guard is still expected to come off and score somewhere between that 13 to anywhere to 33 points per game,
Yeah.
depending on who you are. I just couldn't put George Gervin or Clyde Drexler in. Full disclosure, I'm going to mention it once again because I'm cutting these up into clips. Mention it once again on if you can't watch the guys because your eyes do all the talking for you. That is the number one way to rank people is your eyes. If you can't watch them or you haven't watched a lot of them, you haven't watched them live, you can only look up highlights and whatnot. The accolades are going to be the next best thing. I put them all into a spreadsheet. I calculate it out. I put a points per system onto it, and that's how I calculate out some of these guys are on my list, but I really haven't watched them all that often. So guys like George Gervin and Clyde Drexler, they're on my honorable mentions. Can't justify putting them into the top 5, but they scored out lower than all the other guys from 1 to 5. Some guys might have an issue with how I ordered the 5, or maybe even my number 5 spot. But I don't think there's going to be a huge argument past the number 4 on. It's just maybe how it's ordered. So looking at your number 5, who do you have?
Man, that one's it's a toss up. Honestly, for me, I mean, it's between James Harden
Okay.
or I got another crazy one right here. This
Okay.
Manu.
Okay. That is crazy.
I told you it's crazy. I think, but okay. So the only argument I have against James is the lack of MVPs. Granted, it was a very hard time to get MVPs in the years that he's excelling.
Well,
And
James has
then
one.
he has right. We're right. That's what I'm
Right.
saying. I mean, he played in Steph's peak, LeBron's
Yep. Katie's
one of
peak
many
and
peaks, KD's
yeah.
peak. It was very difficult for him to get there, and then the obvious lack of championships. Um,
Yeah, that's big.
with how many teams that he's decided to jump ship to. And then when it was 2016, 2017 James Harden Rockets, James Harden, oh my gosh, dude, 30 something points a game.
Mm-hmm.
He was borderline unstoppable, and you had Ricky Rubio guarding him with the hands behind his back.
Right.
Did nothing. And then Manu on the other side, with that Spurs team, 4 titles, 3 third team selections, 2 All Stars, 1 six man.
Yeah.
He was just glorified role player.
Yeah.
That's how I look at Manu, and I think he fit their system just like a little bit of Klay Thompson. but I think Manu was slept on. Yeah, I think he still is slept on by a lot of people. I'm not discrediting, what you're gonna say, um, but I think he was very crafty. He was very crafty with the ball in his hands.
I get it. I can never put my top five a glorified six man. I just I can't do it. I'm not putting Jamal Crawford in my top five, so I'm not gonna put Manu in my top five.
That's all right.
James does have the MVP. He's my number five.
Okay.
So he does have the MVP. He has 7 All NBA selections. He's a 3-time scoring leader. He's a 2-time assist leader. He's at 24 points per game, 7.1 assists per game, which leads all of the shooting guards that I have. 5.6 rebounds per game, 1.5 steals, 0.6 blocks, and 44.1 field goal percentage and a 36.4 3-point percentage. So he scored out at fifth. There was no eyeball test shifting guys around. Ooh, maybe I have to move guys here and there. He graded out fifth. The guys below him they weren't close. Other guys I had on my list, Clyde Drexler, Reggie Miller, George Gervin, Ray Allen, those guys aren't in my top five. They just weren't even close to grading out anywhere close to James Harden. It was not close to accolade wise. He actually graded out a little bit higher than fifth. He graded out actually closer to fourth. One guy graded out actually at fifth, but I put him way higher than fifth because he doesn't deserve that. Because my eyeballs tell me a different story. So James is my fifth. So you have a toss up between James and Manu at your fifth, which I get it. But for me, again, I can't put a glorified six man. James was that six man. He grew out of that six man, and he grew into a leader of the team. I understand the hate for James Harden. James Harden was my favorite shooting guard in the league when he was with the Rockets. And that's around the era I'm super young and super into really getting into basketball. A couple years before that, I started to get into it and learn it a little bit, and full swing once James is on the Rockets and he's doing what he's doing. So, to me, he's one of the most unstoppable presence in one time period. He was left-handed shooter, and the step back is still controversial to this day. It's the James Harden step back. The way that he changed the game, getting to the line, for better or for worse, he changed the game for how much he was getting to the line. I mean, he was the original free throw merchant before you had Joel Embiid shooting 1.5 million a game, and Luka shooting 1.5 million a game, and SGA shooting 1.5 million a game. So before all those guys,
we do
watched
tolerate
James
the
Harden.
slander.
Huh?
We tolerate the slander.
Exactly. So before, those guys watched James Harden. They were in high school watching this guy. They were, younger. They were in middle school watching this guy because these guys are younger than me. Mm-hmm. So they were in middle school watching these guys play the game. And that's what they grew up seeing. And so that's what they mimicked their game after. And so that's what they're doing right now. So for me, he is influential. Again, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, he is influencing the NBA for what it is right now. So for me, he's the de facto five. I know all the controversy surrounding him and, the forcing his way out of places. And we're going to talk about forcing your way out of places and being an asshole and being a bad teammate when we get to the small forward position. Because I'm going to bring up some names that people are not going to be happy about. But for me, James is my five. For you, your four, who is it?
We honestly possibly could have the same 4-1.
Okay. We probably have the same players. We might not have the same order.
I put Allen Iverson.
Okay, we don't have the same order.
You have him higher.
I do have AI higher.
Interesting. Okay. It's the same. 1 MVP, 7 in All NBAs, 11 All Stars. I think AI is up there with Steph as one of the most influential players to play this game.
Yep.
It's a signature cross on Jordan. Double cross, you never forget it.
Yep.
He ranks 14th in steals, 28th in scoring. Really just a bucket. If you really think about it. With how small he was, 6 foot, 6'1", 6 foot. He's just a bucket for that Sixers team. I think he was a blessing for them. But that's
Who's
I,
okay? So who's your three? Because our four and our three are probably the same person, and we can make the argument because I probably have them flipped. Who's your three?
Dwayne.
Okay, so I have them flipped. I have Dwayne
Okay.
Wade at four, Allen Iverson at three. So there does come a time where my eyes can't do all the talking and they can't make up ground that much.
Yeah.
So on my scoring, personally, I have AI rated out at a 0.76. For context, MJ is my highest at 1.94. Surprise, surprise. Okay, um, but D Wade is a 0.35 and AI is a 0.76. So I
Okay.
couldn't make up that much ground for me personally watching him. And Dwayne Wade actually scored out lower for accolades than James Harden did. But I'm not putting Dwayne Wade below James Harden at an all-time clip. So for me personally, looking at it, D Wade has those three chips, and I get it. That is going to be the thing that is going to curve most people's lists. And when you look at him, yeah, that could probably sway the list a little bit further to give him more points to get him closer to that 0.7, 0.75, closer to what AI is for me. Um, but I mean, you still played with a Shaq that was still very mobile and still could play a very, very, very prominent role. And you also played with LeBron James and Chris Bosh. I don't want to discredit you that much, but I'm gonna discredit you a little bit. Because you played with guys who were constantly, and you weren't the one option. You weren't the number one option on two of your championships. Um, so AI has an MVP. D Wade does not. Seven All NBA selections compared to D Wade's eight, so he has that above him. D Wade does have three All Defense selections. AI doesn't have that. AI's been a four-time scoring leader though, while D Wade's been a one-time scoring leader. None of them have been assist leader, rebounds leader, so they haven't done that. Steals leader three times for AI compared to D-Wade's zero, which is kind of surprising considered he's never gotten any all defensive selections, but he's been a
Yeah.
steals leader three times. So it's a little bit of a broken system. Appreciate that, NBA. No one's ever been a block leader, even though considering Dwayne Wade's probably the best shot blocking guard of all time.
Mhm.
No one's been a blocks leader. Um, but we're looking at 26.7 points per game compared to D Wade's 22, 6.2 assists per game compared to D Wade's 5.4, 3.7 rebounds compared to D Wade's 4.7. So D Wade does have that above him, but 2.2 steals per game compared to D Wade's 1.5. Blocks per game, D Wade 0.8, one of the best shot blocking guards of
I,
all time.
I have it here. It says as the category 6'4" and below, he has the most blocks.
Okay, see, and yeah. Field goal percentage, D Wade has that above him, but 3-point percentage, Allen Iverson hasn't beat out. So, I think it's really, really close. And again, I think the championships are going to sway people to give D Wade the push like you.
Yeah.
And I totally understand it. I do think when it comes to the influential things on and off the court, AI is, he's Kyrie before Kyrie,
Yeah.
and we're talking about cornrows. We're talking about arm the shooting arms.
The
Bands.
headbands.
We're talking about headbands. We're talking about the off the court how he dresses. Like
Practice?
all of that. All his interviews. Like we're talking about one of the most influential dudes on culture of all time, on basketball culture. There isn't a more influential dude of all time. So I'm gonna give Allen Iverson the push because again he does grade out higher for me just by a little bit. But I can't make that up with what Dwayne Wade has done. I respect him and I love him, and watching him was incredible. But I just can't. I can't put that. I can't put that in there and
all right.
rank him a little bit higher. So again, James is my 5, Dwayne Wade's my 4, Allen Iverson is my 3. For you, Jordan, you said you have kind of a mix between James and Manu at your 5, and then you have AI at 4, and then D Wade at 3. Our 2 and our 1, once again, surprise, surprise. If you look at our point guard video, same thing. We're gonna have the same ranking in the same order. Number 2 and number 1. You can go and read both of them off the same time.
We got the Black Mamba, rest in peace. And then Michael Jordan. The more and more, as an NBA season comes and goes, I appreciate what Kobe did as he passed. I didn't appreciate it. I have my dad. He's like, "Oh, I hate the Lakers," and I had Kobe Bryant, blah blah blah, whatever.
Right. Right.
But as a basketball fan, Kobe Bryant is, I would, obvious top 10 all time for me
Oh yeah.
in all categories.
Yep.
Um, Obviously the 5 titles, 2 Finals MVPs, 1 regular season, should be 2 MVPs.
Should be.
Um,
Should be 2
fuck you,
very
Steve
comfortable
Nash.
MVPs.
Fuck you, Steve Nash.
Yep.
11 All NBA First Team, 18 All Stars, 9 All Defensive First Team selections,
Yep. 12 overall.
which is crazy.
Yep.
4th in scoring, 16th in steals. Which, I mean, if you look at AI was 14th in steals, so he's right there on AI.
Yep.
And I just think, as much as people give it to him, hey, he doesn't pass the ball. He made shots. He was a shot maker and a
Yep.
ball stopper. He was the pressure that you put on your best player.
Yep. Absolutely. He wanted to guard the best player every single night, night in, night out.
Dude, he wanted it.
without fail.
It's crazy.
Absolutely.
I still see that clip of Steph's first year walking past half court. Kobe's on his hip already.
Yep.
He falls to the ground. Steph had to literally push him off just to get a shot off.
Mm-hmm.
I think of that. Yeah, I wish Kobe was still playing.
Yeah.
But
No, absolutely. And it's one of those things as Kobe would be the greatest shooting guard of all time if it wasn't for a guy that played in the 80s and 90s, and the most recognizable name of all time in Michael Jordan.
Yep.
And Kobe does put up a decent rap sheet against him. He tries his best. 5 championships to Jordan's 6. He only has 1 MVP, should be 2. We both agree on that. MJ has 5, though. Kobe doesn't have a depoy. Michael Jordan has a fake pseudo depoy that should never count because the stat sheet guy goes ahead and writes it all down. And all you old heads in the comments, I see you guys on Instagram comments, I see you guys on YouTube comments, I see you guys on TikTok. Everybody does that. Every stat corrector does that. No, they don't. Shut the fuck up.
Find one
you
more,
motherfuckers
please.
are just trying to get off his meat, bro. We get it.
Find
Cool.
one more.
Bro, whatever, man. They
Honestly,
try to bring up some stuff from Jaren Jackson Jr. that it happened in a couple of years ago, but all that stuff was already proven fake. That stuff is not real. All that stuff, not real. You guys are fucking bringing it up just to bring it up. It doesn't exist. Stop telling stories in your head. This isn't a kid's story.
I'm gonna say it right here live on the record while I was recording. LeBron James is more and more every day becoming my GOAT.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's not even just basketball at this point. It's the things that LeBron has done. The picture alone of him holding the American flag. Michael Jordan ain't ever done that.
Yeah.
And it's just at 40 years old,
Yep.
he was selected to represent the U.S. of A. while Michael Jordan was gambling his life away at 40 years old. I'm not taking away from Michael. 5 MVPs, 10 All NBA first teams, 14 All Stars. He has the accolades, but when I look at it, the argument becomes clearer that LeBron should be there. But anyways, I think Michael was obviously great player, but I think he was heavily assisted by his top defender in Scottie Pippen and
don't
one
worry,
of the greatest rebounders of all time in Dennis Rodman.
Oh, don't worry, Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman, they don't make my list, but they both make my honorable mentions on my small forwards and power forwards. So
absolutely.
Yeah. You know who's not on my point guards, and you know who's not on my power forwards, and
Steve Kerr.
So I don't have Kyrie in my top 5 or my honorable mentions. I don't have Kevin Love or Chris Bosh in my power forwards. D Wade's the only other guy. So anyways, but we can go ahead and shut it there again. Just to re-go over it, he has a mix of James / Manu getting some respect at 5. I have James at 5. D Wade for me is at 4, while Allen Iverson is at his 4. D Wade's at my Allen Iverson's at my 3, while D Wade's at his 3, and then we have Kobe and MJ at 2 and 1, and that's probably not going to change for a very, very, very long time. Moving on to the small forward selection, this is one that I think we have the same. Surprise! We got another same 1 and 2 most likely. But when looking at the 3, 4, 5 and honorable mentions, we might have something different here. I think this is where it gets a little bit more exciting, because I think I might have a couple guys in my top 5 that some people wouldn't actually put in there at all, and some people are going to be pretty upset. And I think the same thing, we're going to look at I have some stuff in my power forwards and my centers that people are not going to be happy about. But